The classroom was silent, except for the soft scratching of crayons against paper. Miss Carter, a young elementary school teacher with a heart that often carried the weight of her students' unspoken struggles, walked between the rows of little desks. It was art day, the one day each week when the children could draw anything they wanted. Usually, the pages bloomed with bright suns, stick figure families, and wobbly rainbows. But that morning, 3 drawings would stop her in her tracks, drawings so unsettling they would change the way she saw her students, herself, and the hidden battles of childhood. The first drawing was from Daniel, a quiet 7-year-old boy with messy hair and a gaze that rarely met anyone's eyes. His picture showed a house, except the house was split in half. On one side, he had drawn a smiling stick figure with what looked like a suitcase, standing under a bright sun. On the other, there was a crying figure alone inside, with heavy clouds above. Between them, a jagged crack ran down the page, like lightning cutting through the heart of his home. Miss Carter felt her chest tighten. Divorce, she thought. She had seen it before, but something about the way Daniel had drawn that crack, so sharp and deliberate, spoke of a wound far deeper than he had words to explain. She knelt beside him. "That's very powerful, Daniel," she whispered. "Can you tell me about it?" But he only shrugged, pressing the crayon harder into the paper as if trying to bury his feelings in color. She didn't push. She just placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, silently letting him know she saw him. The second drawing came from Emily, a bright-eyed 6-year-old who usually filled her pages with flowers and butterflies. But today, her paper was covered in dark smudges. At the center was a stick figure lying down, surrounded by red scribbles. Standing over it was a larger figure with an angry frown, holding something that looked like a belt. Emily had drawn herself in the corner, tiny and shaking, her hands over her face. Miss Carter's breath caught. She forced her voice to stay calm when she asked, "Emily, who are these people?" Emily tilted her head, almost cheerfully, and replied, "That's Daddy when he's mad. But it's okay, Mommy says he loves us." She went back to coloring without a trace of fear in her tone, as if pain and love were the same language to her. Miss Carter's hands trembled slightly as she folded the drawing and slipped it into her folder. She knew she couldn't ignore it. Children often told their stories in drawings long before they found the courage to speak them. The third drawing was from Michael, a boy who had transferred to the school only 2 months earlier. He rarely spoke at all. His drawing was the most disturbing of all, a child standing on the edge of a cliff, with tears streaming down its face. Below was a dark pit, filled with shadowy hands reaching upward. Above, in the corner of the page, was a faint yellow sun, almost too small to notice. Miss Carter stared at it for a long time, her heart breaking. She recognized the loneliness in that picture, the desperate cry for light when surrounded by darkness. That night, Miss Carter couldn't sleep. The 3 drawings replayed in her mind, their silent cries louder than words. She knew she had to do something, but she also knew the world wasn't simple. Teachers weren't superheroes. They couldn't fix broken homes, stop abuse overnight, or erase loneliness with a snap of their fingers. But maybe, just maybe, she could be the one person who chose not to look away. The next day, she decided to take action in small, human ways. She began with Daniel. At recess, while the other children ran to the swings, she sat with him on the bench. "You know, Daniel," she said. Softly, "sometimes houses have cracks. But cracks can't take away the love people feel for you. Did you know that?" His small shoulders shrugged, but for the first time, his eyes met hers. They were filled with a fragile hope, as though he wanted to believe her. She smiled. "I'll be right here if you ever want to talk." It wasn't much, but it was a start. With Emily, she was careful. She followed the right channels, speaking with the school counselor and reporting what she had seen in the drawing. But she also made sure Emily knew she was safe at school. During art time, she encouraged Emily to draw happy moments, like the time she helped her mom bake cookies or when she played with her dog. Slowly, Emily's pictures began to include butterflies again. The shadows didn't disappear overnight, but Miss Carter noticed something. Emily started smiling more, as if the act of being seen and heard was already planting seeds of healing. Michael was the hardest. His silence was like a wall no one could climb. But Miss Carter refused to give up. She began leaving him little notes with encouraging words. "You matter. Your light is important. I'm glad you're here." At first, he didn't respond. But one morning, she found a folded scrap of paper on her desk. Inside was a small drawing, a sun, bigger this time, filling half the page. She smiled through tears, realizing that sometimes hope grew quietly, like dawn breaking after the darkest night. Weeks turned into months, and the classroom slowly transformed. The children, once timid about sharing, began to open up. Art day became more than just coloring, it became a safe space for them to express their hidden worlds. Daniel started drawing bridges instead of cracks. Emily drew her family, but now with her mom holding her hand. Michael drew wide fields and skies filled with bright suns. The turning point came during a school assembly when the principal asked for student volunteers to share artwork about what makes you feel strong. To Miss Carter's astonishment, all three children raised their hands. Daniel's drawing showed two hands holding each other tightly, with the words, "Together we are strong." Emily's picture was of a little girl planting a tree, with the caption, "Even small things grow big." And Michael, with trembling hands, held up his drawing of a giant sun rising over a valley. He didn't say much, just 4 words, "There is always light." The auditorium went silent, then erupted into applause. Miss Carter felt tears streaming down her face. She realized that what had once been disturbing cries for help had become powerful stories of resilience. These children hadn't just healed, they had become beacons of hope for others. But the story didn't end there. Their transformation rippled outward. Parents began asking more questions, spending more time listening to their kids. Other teachers started paying closer attention to drawings, realizing they weren't just doodles but windows into children's souls. And Miss Carter, well, she learned that compassion didn't require fixing everything. Sometimes, it only required showing up, listening, and believing that even in the darkest drawings, there was a hidden seed of light. Years later, when Daniel became a counselor, he told people that a teacher once reminded him that cracks don't erase love. Emily grew up to be an advocate for children, saying she wanted to be the voice for kids who don't know how to speak yet. And Michael, the boy who once drew cliffs and shadows, became an artist. His first gallery exhibition was titled "There is Always Light," dedicated to the teacher who once believed in a small sun drawn in the corner of his page. And Miss Carter, she never forgot those 3 drawings. She kept copies of them in a folder, not as reminders of darkness, but as proof of what compassion can do. To her, they were not disturbing anymore. They were sacred. They were the evidence that even in fragile crayon lines, humanity's strength and resilience could shine through. The story of those 3 children, and their drawings, spread far beyond the classroom. It reminded everyone who heard it that behind every unsettling sketch, behind every silence, there was a story waiting to be told. And sometimes, all it took to change the ending was a single act of kindness, a listening ear, or a steady presence that said, "You matter. I see you. You are not alone." Because in the end, the most powerful art wasn't on paper, it was in the way people chose to love each other, even in brokenness. And that was a masterpiece no darkness could erase.